Hi everyone, welcome to our Energy Bill Discount Scheme Explained webinar. We're just going to give it another minute to give everybody the chance to join us. Hi to those that have just joined us. We're just going to give it another 30 seconds or so to give anybody else the chance to join that wishes to join us. Okay, I can see people are starting to join, so we'll make a start. Hi everyone, my name is Helen Gardner. I am Market Policy Change Lead at npower Business Solutions, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's event. So if we go through to the content page, so the agenda we've got for you today is we're going to be covering what has the government announced in terms of the Energy Bill Discount Scheme. So Pardeep Bansi will be covering why the Energy Bill support has been extended and what EBDS is. So Pardeep, would you like to quickly say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Pardeep. I work for the Regulation and Compliance team here at npower Business Solutions.
Thanks, Pardeep. And then after that, we'll head to Neil Rose, who will cover the key changes for business customers, as well as some additional measures that have been put in place for energy and trade intensive industries, and what else we're expecting to come as well. So Neil, do you want to also say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Neil, and I'm the current project lead for npower Business Solutions for the discount scheme.
Thanks, Neil. And quite a few of the questions that have been pre-submitted were around the wholesale market. So we're also joined by Andrew Crabtree, who is our wholesale market expert. Andrew, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, I'm Andrew. I work on the npower optimization desk as a client portfolio manager and sales trader.
Lovely. Thank you for joining us for the panel at the end. So we have had quite a few pre-submitted questions. So we'll go through the main contents first, and then we'll answer those Q&As when we get to the end. If you do have any more questions in the meantime, please type them into the question box that you'll see on your screen now. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, then we will get in touch after the webinar to answer them. So just before I hand you over to Pardeep, as we did with other webinars when we covered the EBRS scheme, it's just to say that all of the information that we're going to be sharing with you today is based on the best information that we have as of today, the 26th of January. It is subject to change. BEIS are still working through all of the details. So for the latest information at any given point, we do recommend you look onto our website for our FAQ page, which is npowerbusinesssolutions.com. Or if you go onto the BEIS website as well, that information should always be the most up to date as well. Everything that we're covering is in general terms. For obvious reasons, we're not able to go into kind of customer specific impacts. So for that, we do recommend you speak to your key account manager or your CRM, who will be able to advise you. So with no further ado, we'll make a start with the content, and I'll hand you over to Pardeep.
Thank you, Helen. So what are we here to do? So we're here to look at the new scheme that the government has announced. If we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Helen. So the EBRS scheme initially was set up to work as a temporary 6-month measure to help businesses from wildly soaring energy costs. It was always intended to be a temporary scheme, but government did comment that it could potentially be extended in some way. Obviously, the kind of designs for the extension have probably undergone various revisions, but what we have now is confirmation that the new EBDS scheme will effectively extend that support. So why has the support been extended? Why has it been extended? It's been extended for a few different reasons. So although wholesale gas prices have reduced significantly over the months, customers do remain locked into a contract agreed prior to the reduction. So some businesses still need the support to pay effectively for the higher cost of energy that was contracted during the period of volatility. So to recognise that, the government has essentially accepted that some sort of support is required, although this will be at a reduced rate when compared with EBRS. And then government has also accepted that some businesses classified as energy and trade intensive industries need further support, so they'll get a slightly enhanced support over and above the standard EBDS scheme. So the new scheme is going to run for the 12-month period from the 1st of April 2023 until 31st of March 2024. So a period of 12 months, and it's going to help businesses while limiting the taxpayer exposure to the volatility in the markets. I think we can move on to the next slide, please, Helen. Thank you. So what is the EBDS? Essentially, the scheme will be very similar to EBRS. The scheme will still provide a discount on gas and electricity unit prices. It's going to operate, as I said, for a 12-month period from April to March. The per unit discount rate will be applied to energy invoices, subject to a maximum level of discount. Again, the discount will be calculated as the difference between the wholesale price associated with an energy contract and the scheme price threshold. As with the EBRS, the scheme will apply to businesses who are supplied through a non-domestic contract, and again, it's going to apply to voluntary and public sector organisations where they meet the eligibility or qualifying criteria. It's going to apply to fixed term contracts agreed on or after the 1st of December, as well as to other types of contracts such as deemed contracts, default contracts, variable contracts, flexible products, tariffs and contracts. And it will include anyone who's signing up to a new fixed price contract, providing it meets the relevant criteria. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, there's going to be a higher level of support for ETIIs, but those businesses will need to apply for the ETII status effectively. And the current thinking is that this will be via the Government Department of BEIS, but BEIS are still formulating the exact scheme requirements and how the application process will work. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Helen. Thank you. So again, the key features continued of the EBDS. Suppliers will get the discount effectively, that they'll be able to recoup the discount level from the government, but they'll apply the discount amount to customer invoices automatically. So customers will not need to do anything further if they're on the basic EBDS scheme. Where a customer is an eligible ETII customer, as I said, they'll have to apply in order to receive the higher level support. But again, how that application process works is going to be published and confirmed by BEIS in due course. So we will hopefully share more details on that in due course. And then, as I said, the government will compensate suppliers to reflect the level of discounts passed on to non-domestic customers. And then, as with the EBRS, the discount rate for comparable contract under EBDS will be the same across all energy suppliers, but the absolute level of individual bills will continue to vary across different contracts and tariffs. I think that brings me to the end of my slides. I think we can hand over to Neil for his section. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Pardeep. Yeah, if you could just move on to the next slide, please. So, what are the key changes between EBRS and moving into EBDS? So, as with the original scheme, suppliers are going to automatically apply the reductions to the energy invoices of anybody that meets the eligible criteria. It will remain a per unit discount. The key message this time, though, is that it's subject to a maximum discount, and that's across all contract types. So even fixed rates will have a maximum discount. In the table we've got there, we just show a bit of a comparison between the rates published for EBRS and then the rates published for EBDS, and we can see an increase in the floor price, which is now being called the price threshold. So across the board, that's gone up by sort of around 40%, and at the same time, the maximum discount that can be applied to contracts has decreased fairly significantly. The discount rates will continue being published on the government website as well. So where we currently pick them up from to apply to customer bills, they'll still be published in the same place, and there'll be EBDS rates, and there will also be ETII rates published at the same time. So the big change that we have a lot of questions on at the minute is around ETII, so the enhanced discount rates. So this is very much still a work in progress. There are workshops that we are currently attending with BEIS on a weekly basis to understand more of the detail behind this and the application of it. The message that we're receiving at the moment is that the price thresholds are higher. Sorry, the price threshold is lower and the increased discounts is higher. Similar to the normal element of the scheme, it will still be applied automatically to the bill. So there's no further work to be done there. The ask at the moment is on BEIS for them to come up with the solution for customers to be able to apply into the scheme. As we've said, that's very much a work in progress at the moment. So there's nothing for the customer to do at the moment, but BEIS will be starting to reach out and put further comms out in the next few weeks. The current methodology is that it will be classified by SIC code, and the government have already set out the SIC codes that would be eligible for this scheme, but they do appreciate that there will be further validation to be done. And they'll be looking for supplier support and the customer's help to identify these group of customers. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the further information that we are waiting for to be able to really lay out what this scheme means for the customers are the ongoing workshops that we have with BEIS. So again, these are on a weekly basis. So we're trying to get into more of the detail and how we can apply this to our customer base. The solution for the identification and application of the ETIIs is being led by BEIS. So that should be in place by the end of March. And we're also awaiting clarification on the additional phases that were announced for EBRS, such as the QFDC discounts and any financial hedge arrangements that customers have in place, and whether or not they are still valid into the EBDS scheme. So what's next for businesses to look out for? EBRS will stay in place until 31st of March, so nothing will change under current arrangements. You'll continue to receiving the discounts on energy bills. As soon as we know more information about the ETIIs, the government should be publishing that information, but we will follow that up with anything that we have, anything that we can help customers understand as to whether or not they are eligible for this section of the scheme. And then in addition to that, we also have the alternative fuel payment, which is for businesses who are not able to receive support for their heating costs through EBRS because of alternative fuels such as gas. There is support available, which is known as alternative fuel payment, and that will be a one-off payment of £150, which will be paid before the end of March.
Thanks, Neil. So we'll make a start with our Q&As in a minute. I guess while I've got the opportunity, I'll ask a question or two if I can first. So it's interesting to see there's such a big change in the rates between the two schemes. Is that rate, are all those rates fixed now? They're not going to change for the whole annual duration of the EBDS?
We've not been given any indication that there is a review point, but as with any government policies, they could be subject to change, but they are, at this point, they are set for 12 months.
Right, thank you. Right, so let's make a start with some of our pre-submitted questions. Andrew, I'm going to hand over to you first, if that's okay. So we've been asked about, Paul has asked, will your core electricity price move with the wholesale cost of gas? And if so, will that be passed on?
I would say we have seen electricity prices move quite significantly away from gas markets during 2022 trading, which was reflective of some question marks around generation dynamics more broadly. I think encouragingly, as we've come into the back end of 22 and into early January trading, the electricity and gas markets have become much more closely aligned. So at the moment, they are far more reflective of each other, but our prices would be reflective of market conditions. So if we do start to see some divergence between those prices again as we get deeper into this year, our prices are going to reflect that. But encouragingly, I think we are seeing much more tight correlation between those markets at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you from Russell. So why are your rates not reducing in line with the massive falls in spot and Fed wholesale electricity?
Okay, well, the big reductions that we've seen in prices have been relatively short term. Well, in the recent history of markets, it's only really since we got into the latter half of December that we've seen quite extensive losses in prices or reductions in prices. The schemes that govern prices in the market at the moment, as in bill prices, are set by Ofgem and they are lagged. So anything that is being arranged under the price cap measures at the moment, the window for actually calculating those prices ended in November. So it was based on a market that was much higher. If current cheaper or softer price conditions continue, then we can expect those measures to catch up with that eventually. But as it stands, the mechanisms that are in place do not capture spot or cheaper spot prices. But the longer those spot prices continue, the more of an effect that has on longer dated contracts, such as the summer or into longer dated or further out on the price curve, and that should be captured by mechanisms that are in place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is more back to the energy bill discount scheme. Neil, this one's for you. So Tony has asked, what consumption volume qualifies a company for the higher relief level?
Yeah, okay. So the energy intensity was based around the consumption as a percentage of their gross value add, which is a statistic held by the ONS. A company would have to fit in the top 20% of that to qualify under the SIC codes that were published. I believe that guidance is listed on the Gov web page alongside the list of SIC codes as well.
And it's not the same as energy intensive industry exemptions that already exist. Is that right, Neil?
Yes, that's correct. So BEIS are considering that as part of the scheme. So they're aware that there is already something out there that people have opted into or applied into, I should say. But it's not exclusive to that list of customers now.
Okay. And the list is set in stone, or is it subject to change like everything else?
Yeah, probably the latter. Probably is still subject to change a little. I think, BEIS are quite pragmatic with it. They're expecting examples of customers to come through, and the more challenge there is around which ones could and should be eligible, I think there could be some wiggle room on that. But yeah, I'll have to see.
And that's a conversation for customers to have directly with BEIS. Is that how
it will be? Yes, yeah. So BEIS the current approach that we're thinking is that BEIS will have a portal that customers can apply into, and then BEIS will do the validation of who's applied before passing that list to customers. To suppliers.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we may have covered it. What is the criteria for selecting the SIC codes for extra relief? That's for you, Neil. So I guess BEIS have determined those SIC codes, but do we know what their criteria was for that?
Yeah, so it's a similar answer really. So it's based on the energy intensity. So it's the ones that fit in the top 20% of industry that have qualified into that list.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Pardeep now for this next question. So this has been submitted from Graham. So is there any information on whether the public sector, especially local authorities, may be covered by the new scheme?
Thank you, Helen. Yes, they should be eligible for EBDS in the same way that they were eligible for EBRS. So for a non-domestic contract, then they would qualify for the EBDS.
Great. So another question on the wholesale market. So Andrew, I'll come back to you if that's okay. Tracy has asked, are rates ever likely to come back to levels pre-Ukraine war?
Arguably, depending on where you look, in some periods are already at pre-Ukraine war levels. I think the bigger question for me is, will supplies return to pre-Ukraine war levels? And the removal of Nord Stream 1 and 2, the pipelines supplying gas from Russia into Europe, makes that a little bit more unlikely. And I think zooming out a little bit, even before we got into the Ukraine war, March 22, we were already in an incredibly well-supported market based on another number of other factors, returning demand post-COVID, issues with the French nuclear fleet. The reason why we've seen prices soften into today is that some of those issues have been resolved, or we've seen supplies come in from alternative sources. Based on where the future view of the market is currently, you have to go quite far out in time to actually see prices come down to something like we were used to historically, sort of pre-2020, really. So I think the view from possibly the market at the moment, and also with the optimization desk itself, is that we might see some normalization in prices. It's just the normalization that we see is likely to be, based on current estimations, at higher levels than we would have expected a couple of years ago.
Okay, so I guess that kind of answers the next question as well. And are the energy prices stabilising now? Are we in a new normal? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, well, we may well be. I think that's the safest answer I can give there. We've certainly seen some normalisation, albeit short term. We've seen massive moves throughout 2022. Prices getting up to many times where we would have typically sort of expected them to reach at their peak. And we've also seen some really significant sort of reductions in very recent trading. It may well be that, we see some relatively sort of more tightly traded markets in the short term, because some of the real concerns around supply dynamics for the balance of this year and possibly into next year have been resolved. As we've been shown by the market in the past 12 months, the expected can be expected, or unexpected rather, can be expected. But at the moment, things are looking a little bit more calm, a little bit more stable.
Thank you. The next question I'll hand over to Pardeep. So Oliver has asked, how does the scheme affect further education within the education sector?
So again, further education institutions, they should qualify for the EBDS if they're on a non-domestic contract and they meet the relevant criteria. So yeah, I wouldn't expect FE to be excluded. They would be well within the EBDS scheme.
But assuming not, wouldn't qualify as for the ETII?
I believe not, but weird things can happen. But no,
look at those SIC codes.
Yeah, that's it.
Speaking of SIC codes, so Neil, next question is on that. So how is the SIC code list being updated and how do you become eligible?
So the SIC codes are within the customer's right to change, I believe. BEIS have a view of everyone's SIP code at the moment, and I think as we said before, the view is that they will have a portal that customers can apply into, and BEIS will validate that against pre-existing list of SIP codes and eligibility, and confirm that back to the customer before supplying the list to suppliers to provide the enhanced discounts.
Okay. So a few questions here which we may or may not have covered, but I'll ask them again just to be sure and to clarify. So Peter has asked, we are a metal fabrication and engineering company. Do we fit the criteria for the scheme? Pardeep, I guess I'll hand that to you. Is it similar to the answer before? It will depend on their SIP code that they'll need to check, but for the ETI scheme, but everyone is eligible for some EBDS.
Yes, that's
depending
true.
on their contract prices. What about the advanced scheme for intense users? How will that work? So I think we've answered that. I guess that's the part that we're a little bit unclear about all of the details yet. That's on BEIS to work through that. But I'm answering the question for you, Neil. But I think we're saying that look on our website and we'll update that the FAQs when we get a bit more information about how to apply.
Just on that, Helen, we and other suppliers have lobbied BEIS to get this detail locked down as soon as possible. So we don't want to be in a situation where we're still finding out the details closer to March. So we did say to BEIS as well as other suppliers that this detail needs pinpointing sooner rather than later, just so it gives more certainty for suppliers and for customers. How that plays out, it's in BEIS' hands, but we have made the representations.
That's good to know, because presumably there'll need to be a bit of lead time for customers to make sure that they've submitted anything they need to submit to BEIS before the 1st of April. So Terry has asked, what are the main differences? Neil, I think you've answered that again in terms of the main differences between EBRS and EBDS. Is there anything else we can add on that? It's obviously a very different level of support in terms of financial.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say, Helen. So if we put ETII to one side, the rest of the scheme is fairly similar. The levels on offer are dramatically reduced. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's fair to say that it's a similar scheme.
Okay. And then we've been asked, what is the discount rate in kilowatt hours?
Do you want me to take that one, Helen?
Yes, please.
So right, hang on a minute. The current discount then for power, and because we showed on the slides that the max discount would be £19.61 a megawatt hour, that would be 1.96 pence per kilowatt hour. And then similarly for gas, the max discount is £6.97 per megawatt hour, which would be 0.69 pence per kilowatt hour.
Okay. What support will remain in place for purpose-built student accommodation? Pardeep, can I ask that one to you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so they would potentially qualify for the EBDS if it's on a non-domestic contract. So it would just be the standard level of EBDS support in line with other similar businesses. And
while I've got you, Pardeep, I think the next one will be for you as well. So what will be the tariff this year? Will there be further relief schemes? I mean, I guess that's key because the support is drastically reducing from April.
Yeah, so I think Neil's already detailed what the support levels are for the year. As Neil said, we expect that to continue for the whole year. There could always be last-minute changes in plan, but we expect that level of support to remain in place for the whole year. In terms of whether there's going to be any successor schemes beyond that 1 year period, We don't know. There's been no talk of it at sort of government circles yet as to whether any support will continue. My guess is probably not, but we don't know how things will play out in the external markets. So it's just a wait and see. But if we have any more information, we'll surely share it with stakeholders in due course.
Thank you. So we've got a few more questions to get through, but I think they're useful because people are keen to find out more. Neil, will hospitality as an industry still be prioritised?
So hospitality will still be eligible for the full EBDS scheme. Whether or not it qualifies for the enhanced scheme, I think is yet to be known. I wouldn't imagine it does, given the energy intensity levels that are in question, but they'll certainly qualify for the base rate of EBDS.
I think it was in the news, wasn't it, at some point over the winter, that hospitality was a key industry, and maybe the news doesn't quite match up with the announcements in this case. So check the SIC code to be sure on that list from BEIS. So the next question is there a calculator to help me calculate the lower level of discount? Neil, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Or how will we be telling customers about their discount level?
So discount levels would be applied through the bills as usual. As they are at the minute with EBRS. I'm not sure if we've already had calculators sent out to customers or TPIs already, but if we have, we'd be looking to update those with the current rates once EBDS goes live.
Fab, okay. Will the discount be applied on my energy bill in the same way, and when will I see it applied? Neil, I'll ask you.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So the current assumption is yes, it will look the same on the bill. It will be applied in the same way. It may be that the description of the line changes from energy bill relief scheme to energy bill discount scheme, and depending on a customer's bill cycle, they may see both on one bill at a time. If it crosses kind of March and April when the schemes change, this is the level of detail that we're still working out really, but yes, the basic answer is it will appear the same way and the customer doesn't have to do anything additional.
Okay, and likewise with EBRS, it will also apply for any new contracts that are signed over this next year as well, is that right?
Yes, it will, yeah.
So the next question is, at the end of the scheme, what happens if a customer has not used the volume of electricity or gas that has been bought for them? Andrew, can you have a go at answering that, or you can maybe hand it over to Neil and Pardeep too?
I'm not sure that that's within either my remit or the scope of the scheme, really. As far as I'm aware, there's not volume parameters set within the EBDS. That's one for Neil, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd agree, Andrew. So I don't really think that's within the scope of what we're talking about. So if any customers under or over consume, that's a hedging decision that Business Solutions take. Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
so you pay you get the discount based on what you use, not on what you forecasted to use. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So you're not impacted in that way. You would only be paying it based on what you actually use, not if you'd forecasted to use more.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you'd only get the discount on billed consumption.
Billed consumption, yeah. Agreed.
So my contract is due to end in September. If I decide to remain on out of contract rates because they are more favourable, will the discount still apply? Neil, I think you said it does cover out of contract rates, but I'll hand to you to confirm.
Yeah, that's correct, Helen. So it does still apply to out of contract rates. We haven't yet had confirmation the discount for out of contract rates. So while that may be true based on the current rate, it might not be true when the new out of contract rates are published.
Okay. And you mentioned about financial hedges as well, that we don't know about that as well. So when we know, will that potentially impact who's eligible? If customers have any financial hedges, they may need to declare it for the new scheme as well, to be confirmed.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we've put that question to BEIS this week, alongside some of the other elements of the scheme. But they're still working through the final policy on that. So as soon as we know anything about that, we can feed that through to customers as well, as to whether they need to continue giving us declarations post-March.
Okay, lovely. So I think we've got about 3 more questions left. How will the discount be applied for customers in a flexible basket? Neil, I'm going to ask you if that's okay. I assume it's similar to EBRS, but a summary of how that works would be useful.
Yeah, so we'd continue to operate it in the same way we do as EBRS at the moment. So anybody that's in a flexible contract or a basket would continue to work out their weighted average price, and then we'd apply the discount to the weighted average price before putting that back into the bill.
Okay, thank you. As further information is released, as a customer of npower, will you let me know, and how? So what's the comms plan, Neil?
That's a good question, Helen. So the current plan would be to, I think when we know more, we'd be open to doing a further webinar. We'll also be looking at sending out any comms to mailing lists that we already hold.
Yeah, and on our website, definitely we'll have the latest information. Okay, so last question then. So you've mentioned we're speaking to BEIS. A lot of the information is still unknown. Why hasn't everything been decided yet? When will it be? And do you, as an energy supplier, have any influence on the decisions that will be made? Pardeep, can I ask you to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I mean, this is typical of the way government works. They've announced the various energy support schemes, both domestic and non-domestic, on a sort of piecemeal basis. They've announced things before the detail is locked down. So it's just it just reflects the way government works. And then, of course, they need to consult stakeholders, and then suppliers typically throw up sort of issues that government haven't thought of before, and then need to then factor that in. So I think it's just a machinery of government and how it all works. That's the reason why it's taking so long. The recent political turmoil also probably doesn't help them internally, and they are ultimately responding to the markets as well. So I think that's why we don't have a clearer picture of how the scheme will operate in terms of precise detail. In terms of whether we can influence things, yes, we and other suppliers do attend the various industry meetings and meetings with BEIS, and we do put forward our thoughts and feedback as relevant. The extent to which that works, it varies. It depends on what the issue is. But yeah, we certainly do lobby government to take into account our feedback.
And I guess just to add to that, it is kind of reassuring that we were in a similar position in sort of September last year, where we didn't know everything about the EBRS scheme, and we hosted webinars on it then, where we also couldn't share all of the information, but we did implement it in time. It did go onto the bill. So I guess we've got comfort in that we've been here before, and I'm sure that we'll be able to get there again for April and make sure that customers know everything they need to know as soon as they do. And that's why we bring these webinars to you, really, I guess, as customers, because it's better we'd like to share as much as we can when we can, rather than wait until the last minute when we've got everything. At least we can sort of share with you bits and pieces as it goes on by doing it in this approach. So hopefully you find it useful. So that was our last question. We'll end it there. If we haven't got to your question today, or you want to submit one now, we'll get back in touch with you very shortly and answer your question by email. Please, again, you'll take a look at our FAQ page when you can on our website. and you'll get a link in your inbox shortly with where you'll be able to watch this recording again. So if you want to watch it back or send on to your colleagues to watch, then you can do that. And thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hope to have another webinar very soon. Thank you.